Hey up everybody, welcome back to Yorkshire Fab Shop. Anybody that's done any amount of machining will have absolutely drilled a hole or two in their time. I know I have. And if you've drilled a hole, then you've almost certainly used one of these as well. That's right, today we're talking about taps, threading equipment and basically tapping holes in general. So you see I've got a bit of a range here, I've got some Whitworth, I've got some metric, I've even got some left-handed ones. Specialist little project, that one. The reason we're talking about them today is because although it is a fairly straightforward process, or on the face of it, it seems to be, there are things that can go wrong and often do. So when we're talking about hand tapping then, this is an example of one of the most common things that can and does go wrong quite often without obviously breaking the tap off. So I've had this set up in the drill. I've drilled the hole perfectly square, perfectly straight, and you can see without even using this square you can see that the tap's gone in on the whiz. So this is, although this is exaggerated, this is maybe because I didn't check that I'd lined it up properly or I was rushing. But in any case, this is quite a common occurrence, and okay, 80–90% of the time this isn't a big issue, but if that had to be absolutely bang on, this part would now be scrap. So all the work I'd done here in the scrap pile, try again next time. There are ways that we can move away from doing this by using some specialist tooling, and that's the main focus of this video today. We're going to talk about some special tapping tooling that can stop this kind of thing from happening. So when we talk about tapping tooling, tapping attachments, if you've not seen them before, what do we mean? Well, here's a couple of examples. So we've got two quite nice pieces of equipment here. Again, a lot of you may have seen them before. Those of you who haven't, two different styles of what essentially is the same thing. So we've got a more modern Tapmatic tapping attachment, and this one is probably a much older Ackworthy. So the premise of these is exactly the same. They effectively fit in place of the drill. So you drill your hole, you put these into the quill, and then you fit your tap into a collet in the holder, and you send it down in the same setup that you've just had the drill in. So that you know when you run the tap down, it's absolutely bang smack in the middle of the hole, totally concentric, totally 90 degrees to the hole that you've just drilled. So absolutely perfectly where you need it. We'll talk about this little Ackworthy first because it's more easy to demonstrate. This and that are the same things, but the difference with this Tapmatic is this section of the body. So this has got a clutch pack in which you can adjust the tension on. So when you're drilling holes or you risk bottoming out the tap, you can set the tension on that so that it allows some slip, it doesn't break the tap off. But they both work in the same way. So you'll notice there's a fixed body and the Morse taper and this bottom section will both spin. The idea of these is that this bottom section where the tap and the collet holder is in effectively the closed position or the up position. You run this down into the workpiece whilst it's spinning in the chuck or the quill. Important to note that this body is retained by an anti-rotation, so that screws in there. That reacts against the column, a stand, some fixed rigid item that you've set up. So that's stationary. This is all spinning, as you can see. Wind it down into the job with tap spinning. Tap enters the work, starts tapping away, and then when you get to the bottom of the hole, what should happen is when you get near to the bottom of the hole, you reach a stop on the drill. This has a small overrun feature, so about 3mm it comes out, and then it will stop spinning. So your tap stops, you don't hit the bottom of the hole. Then as you retract the quill, you lift this up, this whole unit up, and that engages like a back gear or a retract gear, reverses the rotation, and then drives the tap out. So quite a simple operation. Again, there's some gear systems in here that allow that to happen, and that works in exactly the same way. This whole thing spins, this arm stays stationary. Drive it into the work, that pops out. When the arm reacts against the fixed stop, that rotates the collet holder in the opposite direction, drives the tap out. Simple. Now these are great bits of kit. However, these Tapmatics are fairly expensive for what they are, and if you're not going to get a lot of use out of them, you could argue they're not really worth having. These have got these small collets, and there's a range of sizes on these. So this is 2 to 4.5 millimeters, so that does M2 to M4.5. But they're all sized, so you effectively need a full set of those to get the full range of taps. Also, what's in the back of here is there's a clamping system. So the square drive of the tap goes in there, clamp that into there, and then that kind of holds it rigid, but the collet does the alignment so that it's central to the hole that you've just drilled. Now, as you can imagine, these are really expensive for what they are, so a full set of those could be a couple of £100, and that on its own could be a couple of £100. So if you're lucky enough to find a full set of those with a full set of collets, then it's probably going to be cheaper than buying them all separately. The beauty with this one is I've thankfully got a full set of collets, so I can just use that straight out of the box. But the drawback to this one is it's Morse taper 1, so it's tiny, and it has a really small working range, like 1.3 to 6.5 millimeters, but 12 BA is about 1.3 millimeters, so that's 12 British Association threads. People outside of Britain, and the younger generation probably never heard of BA, but British Association threads, up to a quarter width, so a quarter English, which is around 6.5 millimeters, so a pretty good range. But who's going to be working at like 1.5 millimeter threads, and would you really risk putting that in a drill? I don't know if I would. But difference with this one being, obviously it's a bigger unit, but it's got a bigger working capacity, so M3 to M12, much more useful for your home workshop. So to demonstrate this working then, what we're going to do is going to shove a hole down a piece of stock and then put a tap in the end of it. So we're going to work towards the top of the range of this. I've got an M6 tap collet's already in there, so that's a nice fit in there. Tighten up with the spanners that's in the box. So that's pretty much ready to go now. You can put the drill in, get the job set up, and then run that down, and we can see exactly how it works. So with the tapping attachment in there, then you may not be able to see, but the reaction arm is coming off the back. It's not quite long enough to react off the machine column, so got this bit of tube that I'll just slide over there. It's really important you don't grab those by hand, because if it drags you in, then you'll wish you hadn't. The other important thing is you need to check that you've got enough stroke to get as far down as you want, and that the tap isn't going to get caught up on the hole, because a lot of the taps have a wider shank than the actual tap itself. So if the shank gets caught on the neck of the hole, then it's very easy to break them off. And with the Tapmatic, if you set the clutch right, then that's unlikely to happen. But with this, with no clutch, it absolutely could happen. This will just drive it through and break it off. So I notice I've just had a quick practice with that. I've not used this one before, so just run it down there, see how it goes. Seems to have tapped quite well, but we'll run this one down for real now. We'll see how it gets on. So it's as simple as that then, really. Wind it down, let it run as deep as you need it to, flick the handle up, and away it comes. A nice, quick, easy job of tapping 3 holes out there. Just be aware with these that as good as they are and as good as they seem, the one big issue with particularly this one, not so much that, this one in particular, is it is very possible and very easy, really with the small taps especially, to break them off as you're doing that. You need to make sure you've got the right collet size, you've got the right speeds, and that you're careful when you're feeding it in and drawing it back out of the hole, because small taps, M4, sometimes M5, but certainly M4 and less, they are very likely to break. And we've all done a small hole by hand as well, and you get them creaking noises and it's sounding like the tap's not very happy. That will not creak, it'll just break straight off. But on the whole, these are really great bits of kit, and I would absolutely recommend you get one for your workshop if you're doing a lot of tapping, because if I had 50 holes to do and I needed to tap them all, so I had to drill them all then tap, this bit of kit is going to be invaluable at something like that, because as you saw, literally 5 seconds, once that's in the chuck or the quill, 5 seconds, in and out, tapped hole, job done, straight to the next one. If you were to do all those by hand, you'd be there for hours. Now just some quick pros and cons on these. The physical size of this makes that a lot easier to use. Because of how long that is in comparison, once you've got a tap in there. With the smaller drills, M6 and below, often you don't have the length of quill that's needed to get that in and drill the full depth of the hole. So just be aware that those are a pain to use sometimes because of that. But if you've got the length of the quill and you can get all the way in with a tap, then great, happy days, brilliant. If anyone is interested in really knowing how to set these up as well, because you can do blind holes with both of these, and although tatty, it does give you instructions in this how to do it as well. So if anybody's interested in seeing that, I can do another video where we actually set up a blind hole and we'll run the tap down and do it like that. Otherwise, hope you've enjoyed seeing those. As I said, they're a great addition to your workshop if you do need or do want one. They're a lot cheaper than those, so I'd say stick with them, but be aware that they don't have the clutch, so more likely to break a tap off with those. But anyway, from Yorkshire Fab Shop, thanks for watching, see you next time.